Welcome to Moxie Bets, presented by Caesars Sportsbook. I'm your host, Katie Mox, and coming up on today's show, can Miami go 4-0 to start the season? We'll preview tomorrow's game between the Dolphins and the Bengals and give you our best bet. We'll bring back our sports legal analyst, Dan Lust, to break down some of the latest legal stories going on in the sports world right now. And don't worry, you got some Mox Locks coming your way. But before we get started, let's get right into it with the Mox Thought of the Day. The Celtics are still the favorites to win the NBA title on Caesars Sportsbook. It maybe has changed with a couple of them, but we're a Caesars show here. Caesars, they're still the favorite. Fresh after losing the NBA title, it's been a rough offseason for the Celtics. First, one of their best players, Jaylen Brown, found out that he was the centerpiece of a potential trade to acquire Kevin Durant. And now head coach Udoka is suspended for an entire season for an inappropriate relationship with a staffer. Details still remain pretty vague. First, it was consensual. Then Matt Barnes came out with an apology for originally backing Udoka. He walked that one back after finding out what really happened. So clearly it's a little bit more inappropriate at the very least than it appears in the press. Here's the interesting part. Despite all of the drama surrounding the team, the Celtics are still the favorite to win the NBA title. On Caesars right now, the Celtics are plus 550, followed by the defending champs, the Golden State Warriors, at 600. Then the Bucks, the Nets, the Clippers, and the Suns round out the top six. My thought on this, part of me gets it. They've kept around their core team. That's intact, and they've added some depth through the draft and free agency. But this scandal is only going to get worse. Right now, it's kept pretty well under wraps, but it's only a matter of time before this actually gets leaked out to the press and the truth comes out. It's going to be more of an uphill battle for the Celtics. And Udoka was largely credited for last year's success, particularly on the defense. It's going to be a huge loss for the team. But let's bring in our legal expert, Dan Lust, now for the sports attorney perspective. Dan, welcome back to the show. So happy to have you here. There's quite a bit of stories, quite a bit of legal issues going on in professional sports right now. Probably the biggest one right here with the Celtics and Udoka. Let's jump right into it. What kind of legal troubles could the Celtics be facing with Udoka and what's going on there?
Yeah, it's certainly a couple things. And if people were following this kind of drip on social media, it's kind of the good and the bad of social media, right? When you see internet sleuthing and detective work to try to figure out what happened, sometimes that's helpful and other times it can be very harmful. So what we have here, I think Woj released the report on a very early Wednesday morning around midnight, 12:30, and then Shams Charania over at The Athletic followed up and added that it wasn't just a suspension for a violation of team rules. It was for the word here was a consensual, intimate relationship. So consensual in our legal space obviously has a lot of connotations to it. So I think the time about
a lot of positive connotations, right? Consensual is the word you look for in a lot of these situations.
100%. It's positive. And I should mention, Katie, as you know, I used to work for the New York Giants in their PR department. So when I see, the drip of news, I'm wondering where it came from, right? Consensual is a positive word. It is a positive word if you're Ime Udoka, right? Certainly, okay. Right? So what essentially happened here is that was leaked by somebody to Shams Charania. You can use your imagination who that might have been. And that really kind of carried the narrative for the next 24 hours before the Celtics weighed in. And then we saw that press conference with Brad Stevens getting very emotional and Celtic staffers saying, we feel bad for our female employees because people are speculating as to who had this affair, right? Some people married and have kids. And I don't think the Celtics were ready for quite this PR storm.
Well, from a bet, how do you see this going out, I guess, from a legal perspective, in the sense of, suspending someone for 1 year? A lot of people are saying you should have just fired him or released him or let him stay. The 1 year suspension just seems so strange and cryptic to me. But you think that this is fine? Do you think it's going to get worse from a legal perspective, or do you think it's just going to stay the suspension and things are going to keep quiet?
Well, let's. I guess we can get into what we know, right? There's a lot that we still do not know. We should kind of point that out. But we went from a tweet that said consensual, right, relationship between two consenting adults. There's nothing wrong with that. To I guess a hint of unwanted messages. So then I start thinking of terms like harassment, right, or something that someone really does not want. So could there be a lawsuit between Ime Udoka and this unnamed female employee? Sure. Could there be a lawsuit at some point in time for I guess, constructive discharge or wrongful termination if you get there? Yeah, you could. And then the third one, which I think is interesting that we've seen now in the Las Vegas Raiders saga, John Gruden was fired from his job because of a leak to the media, right? And now they're embroiled in
Right.
their own kind of messy lawsuit. But we don't know who leaked this information to the press, right? And I think it's very
Right.
harmful to some of these employees. So I'm counting, at least on my hand, 3 potential lawsuits that you could have. And
Mm-hmm.
that's, one distraction after another is not usually a recipe for success if you're trying to, avenge last year's loss in the finals if you're the Boston Celtics.
Right. All right. Well, let's talk from a betting perspective. Should bettors be wary of laying down money on the Celtics and those odds this season?
I heard all the stories, and Katie, as you mentioned, right, the Jaylen Brown thing, if that was by itself, your star player might be aggrieved. And we've seen in NBA circles, right, if you have one star who's unhappy, he might ask out of town, which has happened plenty of times over our last 2-3 years. So Jaylen Brown, I think, is its own red flag. But this Ime Udoka kind of unresolved situation, on top of it, you're losing one of the top coaches in the NBA who was credited with having this big turnaround with the Celtics, which, there's a lot of things here. I was very surprised to wake up, on Friday morning and see that the Celtics remained the NBA favorite despite this, right?
Crazy.
And Katie, let's pretend we didn't talk about any of these legal issues, right? They lost in the finals last year to the Warriors. So usually you have to get better, right, in order to get that. But, Danilo Gallinari's hurt, and that was one of the big offseason acquisitions. So I'm not understanding how they've become the favorite despite a lot of these red flags being raised.
Yeah, I'm not understanding that either. Okay, now on to baseball. The Yankees clinched the division last night with a win over Toronto, but the country is still in Aaron Judge frenzy, hoping for that 61st home run. It was actually the most popular wager last night on Caesars. Now, I've seen you tweet about this dilemma surrounding the fan who catches that lucky ball, whether to give it back or sell it back to the player. Look, a lot of people have moral opinions on this, myself included, but what is the actual legality surrounding a fan catching a record-breaking home run ball?
Well, fortunately, we have 2 to talk about, right? We have Judge in his chase for 62, and we have Albert Pujols, who just hit 700.
Yeah.
So use either scenario, right? The fan that caught the Judge 60th home run ball, I think to the surprise of many, myself included, decided to gift that ball to Judge for a whopping 4 signed balls, a signed bat, and a picture with Aaron Judge. So, okay, that's one way to handle it. And the other way that the Albert Pujols fan did that caught 700, he got a lot of offers, which I'm sure involved signed bats and signed balls and pictures. And he said, you know what? I'm good. I'm going to sleep on this. This is a big decision. I'm not ready to decide yet. Katie, you asked what's the legality here? Interestingly, right? If you catch a foul ball at the game, you own the foul ball. Same rules that apply to a home run. If you catch the home run, that is your ball legally, right? You own it. You can go back to the Barry Bonds case once upon a time when 2 fans were fighting over that 73rd home run ball, which sold for $500,000. Now, who owned the ball? It was one of the 2 fans. The Giants did not own it. Barry Bonds did not own it. Major League Baseball did not own it. So, I mean, if it's a true six-figure decision or maybe even a 7-figure decision, you're allowed to sleep on it. There's no deadline by which you have to return it to the player. So, it's gets messy when you have fans fighting over the actual catch. But in a clean catch, it's totally up to the fan. He completely and entirely owns that ball. It's his decision his or her decision as to what they want to do with it.
Well, there was the Mark McGwire fan, right, that caught that record-breaking home run, and he wanted a picture with Mark. Mark declined that, so he said, you know what, I'm not going to give it back to you, and he ended up selling it, I think, 3 months later for $3 million. That I understand. If I would want, right, we all think about this. What if I caught the ball? What would I do? And of course, I'm like, I would give it back to them. I just can't imagine asking for money from the player to sell them back their ball. But I can understand being like, hey, I want to meet them. I want a picture. Maybe I want some tickets, whatever it is. You deserve something for giving it back. If they decline that, I can imagine saying, you know what? I'm not going to give it to you. And then a few months later, having slept on it for several nights, then you decide to sell it on the open market. I think it's sleazy to sell it back to the player, but I can understand saying, I don't want to give it back. And then at a later time saying, you know what, I could use $3 million because let me tell you, Dan, I could.
Yeah, I mean, the truth is, we don't know people's situation. Someone might have drowning in student debt or something, very, very big in the player, right? Even a guy like Aaron Judge or Albert Pujols, who have made hundreds of millions of dollars in their career, maybe you don't sell it to them, but you put it on the open market. And I would say, I do feel bad, and maybe this guy will feel different, but if someone after deliberation for 2 weeks and they sit on it and they think about it, and then they decide I want to give it back to the player, I have no problem with that whatsoever. I do feel bad, and I've been at games when a fan or a little kid catches or an adult catches a ball and there's a little kid, and this whole section will chant like, give it to the kid, give it to the kid. Like, okay, that ball's
You
not
don't
worth
have
anything.
to.
It's worth a buck. Give it to the kid.
Yeah.
But for a ball that's could be life-changing money, right? Sleep on it.
Oh, yeah.
As crazy as it sounds, call a lawyer, see what the tax implications are, see what the legal implications are. But
Oh.
after all of that, Katie, if you wanted to still give it back to the player, I'm good with it. But I want our audience, right? I want them to actually think about it and not just listen to the thousands of people yelling at them to do the virtue signaling thing.
Interestingly enough, that you bring up Pujols and Aaron Judge, both on the verge of breaking records. Both of those games were on Apple TV, and fans were not happy, including the New York Attorney General. She called out Apple TV and MLB for not allowing the game to be broadcast on the Yes Network, which is the Yankees' regional broadcast. What are your thoughts on a situation like this?
Story is near and dear to me and Katie, as you are as well, a New Yorker for a period of time, right?
Yeah.
I don't really agree with her at all. She is essentially going out and saying we have all these New Yorkers that are paying for cable. They are entitled to watch the the Aaron Judge home run chase, and
Not true. Yeah.
you know what I mean. At the end of the day, Apple TV, if you have it, right, it's free. It's actually much cheaper than cable is. So the Attorney General is out here trying to protect consumers, but I don't know, all in, right? Apple TV is actually cheaper than cable and the Yes Network that is baked into this equation.
Yep.
So, I just kind of disagree with the premise. Like, Major League Baseball is getting $85 million from Apple TV. It's a business decision that they made. Maybe I don't agree that Michael Kay might not be on the call if Judge hits that home run on a Friday. But every Friday, as people know, right, the Apple TV is going to take those games. And even if you're in a local market, you have to get Apple TV. Is a business decision. Major League Baseball is a private entity, as much as, some fans might think like the team belongs to me. This is a public entity. It was a business decision that Major League Baseball made.
Yeah.
And, really all in, if somebody wanted to get Apple TV, again, it's actually cheaper than cable, which I'm a cord cutter. I'm the first to admit it, right? I'm a big guy that lives on the internet and all this YouTube and fun stuff. Cable is like, in excess of $100 a month, and Apple TV, right? It's nowhere near that. So her platform that this is unfair to consumers and New Yorkers have a right to watch this. That's just kind of, again, a little bit of virtue signaling here by someone that might have potential political aspirations at some point.
Oh, well, that's very true. Also, the Yankees have never been free to watch. You got to pay to go see them. You got to pay for cable. You got to pay for Apple TV. No matter what you're doing, they're not free to you. You don't own them. You have to pay for it. And like you said, it is a business decision. And I know a lot of people are upset with Thursday Night Football and Amazon as well. And it does, anytime something moves towards the future, it does cut out sometimes the older generations. They don't, it's harder for them to figure it out. But it is what it is. Now, let's talk TNF. Let's talk Amazon. The Miami Dolphins head to the Bengals this week, and Tua is planning, or at least hoping, to start in tomorrow's game. He left the game on Sunday briefly when he hit his head on the turf. He cleared concussion protocol, was a little bit suspect there, but he re-entered the game despite looking seriously shaken up. Tua says that his back is bothering him and his ankle. However, the NFLPA is now investigating the incident. What do you make of this whole situation? I was surprised when he came back on the field. It seemed a little bit fishy to me.
You're a pro, Katie. That was a very good transition. That was excellent.
Thank you.
Yes. So I was as well. And you know what else was confused? The Miami Dolphins Twitter account, because it said that Tua is questionable return with a head injury, which was quickly deleted, as we'll say. So, yeah, I mean, if you watch the hit, it's clear, right? If a quarterback goes to the ground, he's obviously going to make some impact with his back. But also, I think the one that people took away was a kind of a whiplash motion to Tua's head. So if you look at the NFL concussion protocol, which has obviously been overhauled in the last decade, if a player exhibits signs of concussion symptoms, that decision was intended to be taken out of their hands, right? So if you watch the clip, Tua stands up. He clearly has some instability, falls down, is helped by a player, falls down again. So listen, they're claiming this was a back injury, but under the NFL's concussion protocol, it really takes a player to visually exhibit signs of a concussion symptom. And then he's worked up. There's a whole 6-level test. One of those tests is to observe the player's gait, which is a fancy way of saying how they're walking. Tua could not stand, so that's a pretty obvious one. And also their neurological condition. So, I've been in I've done personal injury cases on both sides, defense and on the prosecution side. I mean, you could have a neurological injury, not just from your head, but if you get impacted on your spine, it impact your stability. So I'm not sure what doctor would have cleared him. Clearly he had signs here. But the problem is, Katie, from a causation standpoint, at a certain point, they have to go to Tua and they have to ask him, right, what happened? What is it? What's impacting you? And if Tua looks him in the eye and says, my back, somebody, right, be it the team doctor or the independent neurologist, has to say, well, Tua, I know you're saying it's your back, but video says otherwise. The optics of this are bad. And Tua might say, well, this is the Buffalo Bills. We need to win this game. That last point, I imagine, comes up. There's no part of that. It shouldn't be involved now in the 2022 NFL. But that's my sense of what happened here. And now I think, truthfully, why the NFLPA felt the need to launch an investigation because of the optics of this game. It's 21-19, close win. If this is the Texans or the Bears, I don't think Tua is coming back.
I don't think Tua's coming back either. I completely agree. And similarly, but different, when you look at someone like TJ Watt, who got like a 4th or 5th opinion on his torn pectoral, it's like, at what point do players and teams just say, you're not coming back this season and it's okay, get healthy? I feel like so many players and teams just allow their guys to go back out there in really scary situations. I don't think that TJ Watt should be coming back this season. If you need a 4th doctor to be like, okay, I guess it's fine, you probably are not fine.
I'm totally going to agree with you. And then you just go back to the Dolphins, right? The Dolphins don't have, it's not like a situation where they don't have a backup. They gave Bridgewater a contract. I think he can earn up to $10 million. And that's your insurance policy. So the example where this shouldn't happen is Miami, where they have a guy. They have a guy that can fill in, admirably. And Bridgewater's been very good throughout his career. So, I thought the whole situation was very, we'll say odd. So we'll see what the NFLPA comes up with. But, again, all football players are going to want to play, and there's nothing wrong with that. But the concussion protocol was designed to take those decisions away from the player, away from the coach, and put that in doctors' hands. And I'm a little suspicious if that protocol was truly followed here.
I agree. And it seems like the NFL really takes concussions very seriously, certainly with the quarterback. So I'm interested to see how that plays out as well. Is there anything else legal-wise that is happening in the sports world that you would like to touch on?
I got 2 for you, Katie. Ready for this? We'll do them pretty quick. But, I think you'd be, I'm sure you're following this, but we have a situation now with the NBA, and Robert Sarver is now on his way out as the Phoenix Suns owner. He had some investigation into him, some, misogynistic comments and racist comments that were attributed to him. So, we're certainly following that closely, the standard that's being set to kind of force, we'll say, voluntarily force an owner to walk away. And we're seeing ramifications of that now back in the NFL, where there seems to be conversations amongst NFL owners as to what they are going to do with Dan Snyder. Upcoming owners meeting October 18th and 19th in New York City. And we'll see. There's still one more law firm investigation that we're waiting to see the results of into the Washington Commanders. So, we've been following the Snyder. Will he sell the team? Will he leave?
Everybody hopes that he will. I don't think there's one person that wants Dan Snyder to still own that team. Certainly nobody in the organization.
And it's funny now, owners are very, slowly speaking up. And now they're kind of pointing at the Sarver situation and saying, how did they get Sarver to leave? What was he accused of? Isn't that very kind of similar as to what's going on with the Snyder situation? Obviously different,
Snyder's
but
worse.
A number of, I think Sarver had 70 employees speak to, ESPN about the investigation. And there's no shortage of former employees with respect to Washington that are speaking out against Snyder. So keep an eye on it. But I think it's bubbling here.
That's very interesting. All right, Dan, thank you so much for coming on the show. Let the people know where to find you. I know that you host a podcast. You do a lot of hits on television and radio. So let everyone know where to get all of your great perspectives.
Yes, I am at Sports Law Lust on social media, and our podcast is called Conduct Detrimental. We are the intersection of sports and law. If you search sports law on Google, I'm sure my face will pop up somewhere.
It definitely will. Thank you so much, Dan. Have a great day.
My pleasure, Katie.
All right, people, we're brought to you by Caesars Sportsbook, the greatest sports betting app of all time. See, it's not just about the daily promos, odd boosts, or the hundreds of ways to wager. It's about the immortal words of Caesar himself. You bet, you get with Caesars Rewards. Every bet you place on the app, no matter the outcome, earns towards exclusive perks at Caesars Rewards destinations everywhere. Hotel stays, concert tickets, bonuses, and more. Download the Caesars Sportsbook app, become a Caesars Rewards member today, and get more with every wager. Must be 21 or older to gamble. Gambling problem? Call or text 1-800-522-4700. Football season is here, and nothing beats seeing your favorite team live. Not only does Vivid Seats have great NFL ticket prices, they're also the official ticketing partner of ESPN. And with Vivid Seats rewards, when you buy 10 tickets, you get the 11th free. Download the app or visit vividseats.com today. Vivid Seats, life happens live. Receive a reward credit equal to the average price of 10 tickets purchased, excluding taxes, fees, and processing costs. See vividseats.com/rewards for terms and conditions. Let's get into tomorrow night's game between the Dolphins and the Bengals. It's the first head-to-head meeting between quarterbacks Joe Burrow and Tua Tagovailoa since LSU beat Bama in the national championship game. Tua and the Dolphins roll into the jungle, one of two teams still with a perfect record. Tua has a 71% completion percentage. He has a 925 pass yards so far this season and 8 touchdowns. Joey B and the Bengals dropped their first 2 games of the season before grabbing a win finally against Joe Flacco and the Jets. Not too much to brag about there. But that doesn't matter to odds makers. They still think that this is a letdown spot that is looming for the Dolphins. The Bengals are favored -4, this over-under at 47. Miami is the first 3-0 team to be an underdog in week 4 against a losing team, a team with a losing record for the first time since 2018. A large part of that has to do with Tua being listed as questionable due to back pain and an ankle injury. Waddle, obviously, with a groin issue as well. And there are a lot of other injuries kind of sprinkled around their O-line. That said, I'm still not going to lay the points with the Bengals after what I've seen from them so far this season. The money line is also too steep for me to lay, so I'm going to play the under 47 with this game. Right now, the over is more popular with bettors, but sharp money has been coming down on the under with 75% of the money. That's according to Action Network. The Bengals offense has been underperforming this season, and there are just too many questions on the Dolphins injury report to have full confidence in their offensive power. They just played their biggest game against the Bills and they won. They're due for a little bit of regression here. The total has also hit the under in 4 of Miami's last 5 away games. Head-to-head, the under has hit in 6 of Cincinnati's last 7 games against Miami. So that's my full game bet, but I also like a few props here. I'm going to go with Joe Burrow under 11.5 rush yards. Is that -117 on Caesar Sportsbook. Protection for Burrow was much better against the Jets, giving Burrow more time in the pocket, decreasing his rushing yards significantly to 0. He did not have any rush yards in week 3. Miami has not generated much pressure on opposing quarterbacks with just 6 sacks so far this season. I think if the Bengals can repeat, if that O-line can do a little bit better, repeat their performance or close to it against the Jets, I don't see Burrow using his legs as much in this matchup, so I'm going to lock in the under on his rush yards. Second prop that I like, I'm going to take Tyreek Hill for an anytime touchdown. This is at +135, really for the simple fact that he's coming. He is coming for Eli Apple. He said that he owes him, and he wants all the smoke here with Waddle potentially out or limited. All the more reason to get the ball to your veteran in Tyreek Hill. So give me Tyreek Hill for an anytime touchdown. Those are my best bets for Thursday Night Football. If I had to give you my Mox Locks, my 2 that I definitely want to roll with, it's going to be the prop bets. Joe Burrow under 11.5 rushing yards and Tyreek Hill for an anytime touchdown. This has been Moxie Bets presented by Caesar Sportsbook. Make sure you follow us on social at Moxie Bets, and we'll see you Friday.